Originally when I was going to do this is an independent study for school. This is how I do school, y'all. It was going to be an independent study, and it was going to be a really kind of antiseptic paper I was going to write, hopefully to seek publication in Lutheran Quarterly or something like that, where I was just going to take our statements on diversity and where the money went. I just didn't want to write a paper that 5 white PhDs were going to read and scoff at. Do Black Churches Matter in the ELCA is an exploration of what the church has historically done to black bodies who have served it and been a part of it. It's an exploration of why we can't seem to do diversity well, why we can't seem to listen to the prophetic witness of Black Lutheranism and what gifts it has for white Protestantism today. In particular, there's a super problematic history in the Lutheran Church. You can start with Muhlenberg diming out a slave girl on his way up to Philadelphia, and you can go all the way to the way Yaho Jones was treated by the Pennsylvania Ministerium, and then you can just look around your own neighborhood at churches that are these bastions of whiteness surrounded by black neighborhoods. I feel like the prophetic witness of Black Lutheranism is the only hope for the ELCA going forward. We talk about less members, we talk about how we're not in the center of society anymore, we talk about how no one really listens to us, we talk about how we have less funds, we talk about how we have less resources. Well, Black Lutherans have been dealing with that since day one because the systems of our church have placed them there. And I don't believe it's intentional. White supremacy is a culture that people are born, they're baptized into it like a believer's baptism in another tradition. And when they come up from it, they're so steep in it, they don't even realize what they're doing. In the course of doing that, as I explored different things, I realized that this story was too important. When I ask you the question, do Black churches matter in the evangelical Lutheran Church in America, you have two very visceral answers. And depending on what kind of answer comes to your mind automatically when I ask you that question, it really depends on how you're going to see this movie. Some people will hear that question and say, no, they don't matter. The systems that are in place don't support them, that people are being crushed, that the story of Black Lutheranism is littered with bodies of our elders, all the way down to Yaho Jones. And then there's some people who will hear that question and say, yes, the prophetic witness of Black Lutheranism is so important for the evangelical Lutheran Church in America. And so my hope for this movie is to start to bridge the gap and close that distance between those two answers. So from 1834 to 1840, as far as we can tell, this is just a record we have. We don't know for sure if this is true. I mean, This is the whole research part of it, right?
Exactly.
But as far as we can tell, Yaho Jones was never paid.
Right.
Do Black churches matter in the ELCA?
That's a tough question to answer.
That's a hard question to answer as a yes or no.
I think if you would hear it spoken, the words would be yes.
I think that Black churches have great importance, are very important to the ELCA.
If you would judge me by my actions, my words would be no.
No, I don't really believe it at all. I don't believe the ELCA's commitment to it.
In some ways, they matter a lot, but in some ways, they matter very little.
But as a whole,
I would say no.
I don't feel, let me say, a commitment from the ELCA to black congregations.
Yaho Jones was one of the earliest African-American pastors in the Lutheran tradition, ordained and a member of the Ministerium of New York, who at one point with his family moved to Philadelphia. And so within this, it's a very interesting insight into the work that he was doing, the day-to-day work that he was doing as a Lutheran pastor. Since I left you, meaning the ministerium gathering, said I have visited 2,781 family, 163 of which were to be the sick. He said nothing around to excite the feelings from then. It was about when I had visited a house where gathered the most criminal debauchery that I have ever seen. He said very much with their sinful and degrading condition.
So he was going to like the places no other pastor would go, basically.
Which he called colored people of all descriptions. But what he also does towards the very end is he inserts a sentence, oh, by the way, I haven't been paid yet. They acknowledged these letters, that they received them, and the fact that we have them in the collection meant that they did receive them and were retained. They didn't discard them, they held on to them. But he's been in this ministry from at least 1833, and now we're getting close to 1840. And he's still writing letters, seeking financial support for his work.
We could talk about the many decisions that have been made that says that we as a church want to be more diverse. For me, they tell me your actions speak louder than words. So we have a whole lot of words on paper. I would encourage us to put those words into action, to do what we say we're going to do. Currently, we have 17 congregations that have disbanded within the city. And we have one Latino ministry that remains. And we have 2 African descent established congregations that have remained. And I have all the memorials and resolutions and social statements and all of that. They look good, they look great. I think institutional racism plays a large part in it. I mean, for me, I'm continually struggling with internalized oppression and what that looks like. And so I'm acutely aware of overt and covert racism within our institution, which says to me, it looks good on paper, but I'd rather see your actions. In the words of Langston Hughes, live your creed.
Apart from race has been a part that you have to deal with, especially when you're black or Hispanic, Latino, whatever. You carry that with you, and people see that if it's from your accent or from your skin color, whatever, they see that, and you have to work along with that. I think the work of the ministry, it takes commitment. The church is going to have to commit. The national, the synod, all of us have to commit. We're going to keep this ministry open. We're not going to get a lot of money out of this ministry. That's what we're expecting. It's probably not going to be self-supporting for a number of years, but we're going to hang in there, and we're going to work with this congregation because we see there's some work, some great work, good work that's being done in that part of the city.
For me, the investment has decreased. We'll take into consideration the number of African descent and African nationals and Latino leaders, and the investments that have been made into this particular group. If we say we want to be want diverse, we need to invest in our leaders.
So then I have to ask you the question I've been asking everyone. Do black churches matter in the evangelical Lutheran Church in America?
At this point in time, I truly have to say, for the most part, I don't think so. I believe that there are plenty of people in this church who really care about the black community, about churches in the urban area, about doing ministry with people who are in poverty. But as a whole, I would say no. The gap is we are talking the talk and not walking the walk. Obviously, as a church, we are not living out who we say we are.
CCLP for me was a time of fun and fellowship. Really came into this as a child, so a member of Holy Cross, 9th and Lehigh, North Philly, came in through Holy Communion class, actually in the midst of a transitioning community. So we were the first African Americans on the block where my mom currently still lives. And so our first introduction was the white pastor and the white intern coming, knocking on the door, inviting us to camp, to VBS. Come, participate. And so that kind of was the intro. So it was children first. And so we came, and then actually, as we got involved in the church, and then our parents came. And so I have to say our, because I have 8 siblings. And so there are 9 African American children now in this German Lutheran congregation that is now reaching out to this community that's transitioning. The emphasis, the focus, and the investment, and I have to highlight investment because there was a financial investment into these communities that were transitioning. And so the investment was in children. There was Sepsi Day and Unity Day and all of these Sports Day, all of those events were meant to bring children from the city together to help build relationship and help to build social skills. And so I think that was important and an important investment.
The desire of the Lutheran Church is to create a template which is essentially suburban, posited on growth in numbers and growth in income, and that self-sustaining in 5 years or 7 years. It does not work in the city. There's this constant pressure, to go on your own, go independent, and go be self-sustaining. No, the most important thing is not to become self-sustaining, but to take care of these people. If you wanted to have a more diverse church, you have to put the money where the diversity is.
That was the LCA's response to the civil rights era and some of the problems that were happening in the inner city.
Yep.
And then in 1986 or 87, the ELCA is formed.
87.
87, and right after that, that money went.
It went south, yeah.
And the funny thing is that now we're trying to get a foothold back in the cities as things are changing.
Yeah, good luck.
All the congregations in the city, because it's the city and the problems, the issues and so forth that are endemic to city living and so forth, and trying to maintain a congregation in the city, I'm not quite sure that the church has its focus on that.
And of course, always, I'm not going to say people on the margins, but people in the margins, who we have opportunity to walk with and to accompany on this journey. I haven't really seen that played out. I'm challenged because I'm in the city for good. It's not a button I wear, it's not a program that I participate in, it's the life I live. And so therefore, as I walk with my colleagues, and I understand that my colleagues are paid below salary guidelines. My colleagues don't have insurance. My colleagues are challenged in that they've been in this church for many years, but don't have pensions, and so they have to continue to work in this church. And you say, well, why don't they have pensions? Well, their pensions are so meager that they can't afford to retire, so therefore they have to continue to work. Why? Because their salaries have always been below guidelines. And so they have not been able to accumulate, like our other brothers and sisters, the monies, resources necessary to be able to retire at what we would call a reasonable age.
It's not a question of the rhetoric, it's the question of doing it. And we're stuck at the rhetoric. And there's nothing happening and nobody notices.
The churches that matter in the ELCA are the churches that can be financially sustainable. The churches that are not financially sustainable are allowed to just, through benign neglect, just fade away.
I think the prophetic witness, I mean, number one, we're here. I'm here because I believe in the Lutheran theology, you know, and I think that's what drew me and that's what keeps me. Because often, you know, you receive the question, why are you in that white church? You know, and I said, because the Spirit drew me here and God has called me here, so I remain here because if nothing else, I have a presence. I have a presence and I have come to learn that the prophetic piece for me is to speak truth to power.
In this country, we seem to have become what I call Christian capitalists.
So I'm going to speak my truth. And I'm freed up to be able to speak that truth again as I come to understand my own internalized oppression, the microaggressions against my soul that have really happened as a result of remaining in this institution. But my awakening comes as I understand the impact of chattel slavery and how it continues now in the mindset of the predominant culture. That's why I said it looks good on paper, but I'd rather see your actions.
If you combine the propensity for rhetoric with the absence of action, what do you get? A lot of mouths, no action.
We operate on what I would call a fiscal Darwinistic type of model in which we affirm the strong congregations that can actually afford to pay some money to mission support and to help participate in the building of the larger church. But those churches that cannot sustain themselves and can't contribute, the only thing we can seem to offer them is encouragement to make bricks without straw kind of a thing. There seems to be no investment on the part of the ELCA in urban cities.
First things first, a redistribution of wealth.